Dr. Josue Falaise is the founder, or Falaise, excuse me, Dr. Josue Falaise is the founder and CEO of GOMO Educational Services. He is a former teacher, principal, assistant superintendent, chief academic officer with experience from suburban and urban school districts that spans over 2 decades. He was also the director of the Rutgers Institute for Improving Student Achievement, RIISA, at the Rutgers University Graduate School of Education. During his time at RGSE, Dr. Falaise traveled the globe working with over 100 school district organizational leadership teams and higher education institutions to help them design systems of addressing learner-centered needs. District organizational leaders and their teams participated in short-term and long-term growth opportunities across the U.S. to review, critique, and redesign systems, policies, procedures, and practices for learner-centered needs and equal access opportunity for all students and clientele. At GOMO, that's GOMO Educational Services, Dr. Falaise is continually seeking partnerships with countless schools, districts, and businesses to help empower agency and voice of the adults for the sake of students over several service learning platforms. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Reading Circle microphones, Dr. Josue Falaise. Dr. Falaise, good morning again.
Good morning.
Well, as I said, I am glad to have you on here, especially given everything that's going on, one, in our political climate as well as in our educational climates. When I say that, because if I remember correctly, aren't you from Haiti?
So I'm first generation Haitian American.
Right. Okay.
And just so for the listeners out there, my name is Josue Falaise. So it is almost like Josue, like in Spanish. However, it's in French, en français. So Josue Falaise.
Josue. Good. I'm glad because I had a student, and that's why I was saying Josue, because I had a Josue as a student. So it's Josue Falaise.
Falaise, yep.
All right. So, and the reason I'm saying that, because as you know, there's been a whole lot of, for lack of a better word, chaos and consternation and just flat out lies and untruths. And a lot of it, or some of it, is stemming from the views or what's being said about the Haitian community. So that's what I'm saying. It's timely that you're on here with me, along with everything that we have going on in education. So as I said with you when we were chatting a couple of minutes, I usually kind of start with, where did it start? Kind of like as you were coming through, because, you know, we have down here in your bio, we have principal, assistant superintendent, chief academic officer. You've worked at the college level. Did you intend to be an educator when you were a child? I mean, was that like on your radar screen as a child? When people said, what you want to be when you grow up, you said, I want to be a teacher? Or did that come later?
That came later, about the time that I was actually looking to become a professional. When I initially was younger, my goal around since the age of around 6 or 7 was to become a veterinarian. And I speak to it in the keynote, but that was my heart's desire. Did everything to become a veterinarian. However, I was constantly being told that I couldn't because of the color of my skin. And then eventually I would say after, even at college, I would say starting on my undergrad, I wanted to kind of still become a veterinarian, but the climate, society was still not fully acceptable of Black men at that time becoming veterinarians in the around early 90s. Or late 80s. And then it was solely because of a fellowship that I was applying for, and I could not get into that my mom said, why don't you become a substitute teacher? And I'm like, not really, even though there was a good majority of my family on my mom's side that were educators. But I was something I wanted, because I was still looking to become a vet, and potentially, if that didn't work out, go into medical school. As my backup plan, And lo and behold, I ended up in teaching because I didn't get the fellowship. So it started off with just substitute teaching, which led into the cascade of event of my life.
That's interesting that you would say about a veterinarian, because I have a student in my school right now. He's an 8th grader, and we were doing a program on yesterday or day before yesterday, and the presenter had asked, what is it that you intend to do, whenever you're an adult? And the young man said veterinarian. What struck your interest, or what caused your interest to become? Because, again, I am of the ilk that there are so many careers out there that we just never talk about with children in school. They always hear the common ones: doctor, lawyer, preacher, teacher, the common ones. But there's an entire occupational catalog that careers just unheard of. What caused, or what struck your interest in becoming a veterinarian?
It started with my father just bringing a dog to the house one day. It was totally unexpected. And I'm the eldest of 7 children. So I just took this liking to this dog we had called Ginger. It's a mixed German Shepherd. And I just loved the dog so much and wanted to learn more about not just the dog, but dogs, German Shepherd. And then I would say a couple weeks later, he brought cats, 2 cats that he brought to live with us. And I became more of the nurturer, protector of both all 3 of those animals, and that's what started the whole thing. That's what kindled my love for animals.
I find that interesting because it was something that you said when you were giving your response in terms of this was going back into the 80s, because oftentimes what we hear is back in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, maybe perhaps even some of the 70s, about this whole notion of not being able to be accepted or do something because of the color of your skin. It was interesting that you're saying back in the 80s, your wanting or your desire to become a veterinarian was not necessarily accepted because of the color of your skin. Talk to me a little bit about that. Did that alter your course? Was that the sole reason, or was it just the fact that you didn't get the scholarship, because this whole notion of not being able to be accepted or looked down upon or think that you can't do it is always, that's why I'm studying what I'm studying in terms of leadership and social justice. And that's why I talk the way that I talk and say what I say when I'm working with my students, because I'm always of the ilk that no one is going to tell me what I can or cannot do based on the color of my skin. So talk to me a little bit about what was that experience like, from the standpoint of just, I want to be a veterinarian, but the obstacle is because I'm Black.
So in those days, depending on where we lived in New Jersey, in a very affluent area, we did not have extreme financial means. And it was also in an area where it was pretty much homogeneously of a certain race during that time in the 80s and 90s. So even when we played with children literally around the corner, we used to hear at like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, then it's 5:30, 6 o'clock, you got to leave. My father's coming. He's racist. So my brothers and I would literally have to just leave that home to go run home, and we stopped playing with that neighbor.
Wow.
And I say that just to give us context to the prevailing perceptions, again, around where we lived. It doesn't have to be everywhere. That I was told implicitly and explicitly, people of color don't send their pets to the vet, but even more so, what person of the dominant race would ever send their pets to you as an adult male of color? So implicitly and explicitly, 80s and even 90s. So that's why that played not only a internal but psychological hindrance to what I wanted to do. Now remember, I'm 80s and 90s, so I'm born in 1973. So in the 80s, I'm just hitting my teens, and then this has been this prevailing mentality, but even self-fulfilling prophecy at that time. At the manifestation of it. But then as you get older, still like psychologically impacting you, like I still can't, because that's what I'm hearing. consistently.
Oh, absolutely.
My parents are both immigrants, so they are also trying to navigate, the U.S. society. There's a lot of things that are told to them that they can't, and then although both my parents kept saying like you can do whatever you wish, but then it's still like potentially they may be hindered. And the perfect example for that is they didn't even want to teach us English. French or Creole, because they said our children are born in the U.S. so they can succeed in the U.S. So we're going to work with us learning English great, and then not having them worry about speaking Creole or French. And it was only until my grandmother, who moved in with us and did not speak any English, that we were forced to speak Creole, and that started the language differentiation towards French and Creole. Creole to French. But it's just this prevailing things when people migrate to the U.S. that are immigrants, and then they have to, depending on where they live, what's being told, that becomes that kind of prevailing thing, and then everyone else is just trying to assimilate.
Wow. I'm just sitting here listening to that. It's not necessarily shocking to me. It's sad to me that we are still, even in 2024, we're still having these conversations. Matter of fact, it's reared its ugly head again even worse because it's at the national and international level based on commentary that's being made. And we'll work our way up to that. But like you said, in terms of what you're being told now, that conversation you had of no one would come to you would not have been held if it was a child of the dominant group that was saying, I want to be a veterinarian. Nobody would be saying, well, nobody's going to come to you but yet the commentary was made to you, well, who's going to come to your business because you're a black man or you're an African American or Haitian American veterinarian. I mean, that's mind boggling. And so now, like you said, because this is where education for me is like an absolute passion. And I have a feeling that's probably where it probably got with you in terms of words shape what people do or do not do. Words are powerful. And especially when you're talking with kids and teenagers. I cannot tell you, and you know it as well, how many children say, I became this because of a teacher. You also have the flip side of that where a child will say, I wanted to do that, but my teacher told me I couldn't, so I didn't. Or my teacher told me I was no good at it, so I didn't. And again, like I said a couple of minutes ago, where you might have someone who wrote a book because their English teacher or their ELA teacher said, you're a good writer. So,
can I interrupt?
Yes, please jump in.
So, and I want you to come back, but I just want to say this real quick so I don't forget. I also had a cousin who was smart enough to go to medical school, could not get into the medical school in the U.S. So now this is, again, 80s, 90s. He had to end up, the pathway to go to medical school for a lot of blacks at that time was to go to Mexico. And when they come into Mexico, after graduating from Mexico, they would try now to full certified, medical doctor, and then they would try to come back to the U.S. There were systems of tests that they had to take, 3 big series of tests. And now I'm hearing him. It's black people have difficulty getting into medical school. Black people have issues of getting into veterinarian school. At that time, people used to go to St. Kitts. And again, you still have a series of roadblock of exams that to be able to become in the U.S., those were things that they had to go to. So it's not just even hearing words. I'm hearing people, close people to me, that are hitting these roadblocks because of the systemic barriers.
I'm seeing because like this conversation is right in my wheelhouse. And there's a reason I'm going down this line of question, because at the end of the day, in spite of it all, you've made it and are making it. You're not even there where you're ultimately going to be. You are making it. But this is in spite of what you were being told and what you were hearing. And see, that's where, for me, where the inspiration comes in. Because as I said, whenever we were chatting, and we're going to work our way to this as well, that last story you told during the Institute to me, when you put that slide up there with the 6 or 7 kids, I thought that was powerful as I don't know what. I mean, I left there like, oh my God. Because see, again, that's the short-sightedness to me of this country. You were just talking about the language. And I've traveled the world also. I mean, I've been to various countries. Other countries celebrate the fact that you can be multilingual. They celebrate the fact that you know 3, 4, 5 languages. Matter of fact, a tour guide that I had when I went to Germany, she knew 5 languages fluently. Here in the United States, in America, we always try to force folks. And don't get me wrong, you live in the country, so yeah, you should learn English. But we get into this cocky attitude of everybody has to speak English, and we are, in a way, almost look down on the other languages. I mean, I remember when I was in France, they were very clear on that. If you even try to say a couple of French words, the people in France, they will help you out. But if you come over there, cocky, refusing to even try, and all you do is speak, and you would have French people who knew English, and they would speak to you in French. Because it's like you're not even going to make an effort to try to speak our language, and you're here with us. So I find the United States, because in other countries, again, they start in the lower grades, like in the kindergarten, first, second grade, whatever, teaching other languages. So here I'm listening to you, like your parents were saying, no, don't speak the French, or don't. I cannot tell you, I've been trying to learn. I have been practicing and studying Spanish since I was 16 years old. I'm still not fluent. I'm way further than I was when I was 16, but I'm still not fluent as I would love to be. I just think that's the coolest thing, to be able to speak in more than one language. So talk to me a little bit about in terms of, okay, you were a substitute teacher, because again, this is my 25th year, and I did 15 years in corporate prior to coming to education. This is my 25th year in education. And I know what kids do to substitute teachers. As a matter of fact, I had an incident in my school yesterday with kids taunting and substitute teacher. She came to me like, I don't know if I want to do this based on how the kids were treating me, this, that, and the other. Now, we for the most part, are resolving the issue, and she's coming back. But kids can be cruel to substitutes. And so it takes some vigilance for a substitute teacher to turn around and say, yeah, I want to do this. I want to be a teacher. Talk to me a little bit about that.
So, yes, that's very powerful. Obviously now, I would say there's such a significant difference in how students view substitute teachers. This is, historical, and I don't know where it started from, but it's basically the substitute teacher is not their permanent teacher, and that's the reason why this prevailing perception. But I did also have challenges, but my father raised us very militantly. It was always being told when people say this, you need to push past them because you are Falaise. Don't let anyone tell you what you're going to do. You're going to surpass them. You have to be better than everyone else. So during my time as a substitute teacher, I did get challenged a lot. The thing was, I was young. I was about 23. This was after my military tour. I got out of the military and I came back to go to school and went straight to substitute teach. So I was a young, pretty strong. I used to work out twice a day. So people saw not only the youth, but also the physicality. And there were things that I was just not going to have an elementary, middle, or even high school student come and challenge me. So there'd be a couple of face-offs, So I remember the very first day of substitute teaching. I had this school and elementary students. It was second grade. The thing I constantly seen on, I think in my little research was try to be nice to the children. And I saw something about a teacher bringing in like quarters to get the students to listen. And I was in this East Orange school district, and I can't remember the name of the school. And I brought in probably something like $3 or $4 worth of quarters. And as I would ask the students to do something, second grade, I kept giving quarters. And then when the money ran out, what do you think happened?
The behavior changed back over.
Yeah, and that was day one. I had to go back to the same students in day two. And I'm like, I can't keep doing this. And I did eventually bring a few dollars, and I was giving out dollar bills. the vice principal of that school heard and said, "Boy, look at you. You are a young black man. Again, I'm looking at the physicality, and you're smart, you're strong, you're." Oh, she kept giving me all these accolades. How dare you let these little children run all over you? And she gave me a talk and just ultimately stated, "No more money, none of this," because I had to go back the next day. It was a 3-day tour, 3-day assignment, and she just gave me some tools that said, starting tomorrow, this is how you're going to act. This is how you're going to behave. And you're not going to let anyone tell you what you're going to do, but you're going to be assertive. And these are things that I normally was, but because I was like, I didn't go to an urban school growing up. I grew up in Montclair. Not only Montclair school system, but I also went to school in Bloomfield for Catholic school.
Right.
So there was also a cultural difference. Like, yes, these are my people, but at the same time, like, I still don't really know you.
Right.
So that's why I guess I had like pity, but giving the quarters, but that was playing into some other cultural appropriation too. So as I, obviously got older, became smarter, and I basically worked only in urban areas, that helped me evolve into the educator that I became to be.
Well, again, first off, as you know, in education, first off, we need everybody, but certainly, and especially when you start getting into urban areas, and I can even say suburban too, they need to see black males in the classroom. All right. Need to see black males in the principalships. We need to see black males in the superintendencies. We need to see black males in these positions. One, because it'll give the kids something to aspire to. Secondly, you have the kids in the classroom who are now working with people who look like them. That is more important than people understand. I remember one of my first vice principal assignment, I was in a more affluent area of Patterson, the school that I went to. Matter of fact, they used to call it the country club. When I first got assigned, and they was like, "Oh my God, you got the country club." So anyway, one day I come out on the playground and an African-American woman comes up to me, and this had been like a couple months after I'd been there. And she comes up to me and she's laughing and she says, "Mr. Medley, I owe you an apology." And I said, "Why?" And she says, "I see you come out here on the playground every morning. I thought you were the big black security guard." She said, "I didn't realize you were the vice principal." So not only is the thinking like that with, our Caucasian brothers and sisters, sometimes even in our minds, we don't associate us being in these positions. Because in her mind, she associated, okay, if he's black, he must be a custodian or either a security guard. And so we had a good chuckle and a good laugh about it. But I always tell and remember that story because just again, how do we see ourselves? How, not only does our white brothers and sisters see us, how do we see ourselves? So the fact that you've been and served in these roles are critical. Not to mention, even though you grew up in the more affluent, but you were in front of kids who look like you and you look like them and they look like you. Extremely critical. So you work your way up now from teacher. And I was just talking about my first assignment as a vice principal or assistant principal. How did you go from teacher to principal?
So when I realized that veterinarian school and potentially medical school was going to be either put on hold or not being pursued anymore, that's when I decided in my head that I'm going to become a doctor no matter what. So I'll go for a doctor in education. So I did my research to see if there ever was, because the only doctorate I heard was like medical or veterinary at that time. I didn't even know, about PhDs. I didn't understand anything about that. So when I did the research, I'm like, okay, so what is the pathway towards becoming a doctor in education? And, we heard of mostly the doctors in education, majority were all white during that time also.
Correct.
And so I'm like, okay, I do know, I think the only doctor at that time was Dr. Larry Leverett, who was the superintendent of Plainfield at the time.
Right. I know him. I remember him. Yes.
And the superintendent of East Orange was also black at that time also. So those were like pretty much the two only black superintendents or educators that I knew. So when I did do the research, I was like, okay, I can do this. This is what it's become. And, you know, people always are also saying, again, our people, whatever, doesn't matter what people, that, you know, it's going to be hard. Do you think you can do it? And my mindset at that point was, nothing's going to stop me, only death. Death is the only thing that's going to stop me from becoming this.
I know that's right.
So, and I heard it from every single angle possible. And regardless of every obstacle that I did just come into, I was like, only death is going to stop me. So just, yes, if I had to take a break, I'd take a break, but just continued and persevered. Whoever I need to reach out to, you know, whether it help me proofread or whatever, edit, I did. If I need someone just to call me and, hey, can you support me with this and give me some emotional guidance, pep talk, I did.
Well, see, again, that's why I definitely, I don't care if it's on Zoom, I don't care if it's live or whatever. I got to get you to talk to my boys at my school. Because as you know, as I shared with you, I got an all boys school. And the boys in there are black and brown. They're all Hispanic and black. I think I'm taking a student now that's coming in that's going to be, it's Arabic. If I looked at the name correctly, I think he is, but I'll have to see. But in any event, the bulk of my school, if not all of my school, is black and Spanish. And exactly what you just said is what they need to hear, because I get a chance, because of the way my school is set up, I get a lot of FaceTime with my kids that they normally don't get in a large school with the principal. So they get a lot of me and I get a lot of them. And we're constantly having talks. And this notion you just said about it's going to be hard. Folks need to really understand, just because something is hard does not mean you should not pursue it. They always want to take the easy way out. Like, okay, yeah, it's going to be hard. And like you just said, nothing's going to stop me short of death. I mean, anything other than that, we doing this. That's kind of like the mentality and the spirit you have to take. And something you said earlier about your dad's thinking in terms of, you're a Falaise. You're a Falaise. You're not, one, you're not going to dishonor that name, and two, you're going to make something out of it. That's the kind of spirits that, you know, we need to have, particularly, I mean, and we have had as black people, as you know, people of dark skin. We've always had, that's why we're still here. But there's a faction of us that are just the opposite, that everything is the easy way, the lazy way. And that's what we have to constantly dispel. That's why when folks like you, you get my attention immediately. Like, oh, there's a brother that did it. So you're coming through now. You're doing the doctoral program, and I can relate because I'm almost done with mine. I got another year and a half to go. So I can relate to exactly what you're talking about with the emotional support, the pep talk, I'm there. I know. So, all right, you're doing that. So now you move from principal to assistant superintendent. I'm working my way through your bio. Assistant superintendent. How'd that come about?
So let me backtrack and then I'll move this way. From a substitute teacher, I eventually became a teacher. While I was a substitute teacher is when I did this research and on what the pathway to become a doctor. So I actually started taking classes in my master's as a substitute teacher. And then that I actually finished it during my first year of teaching, I believe. Yes, I finished the program in a year and a half, 1 year. I started the January of 1 year, and I graduated in 2000, and I graduated from my master's program in May of 2001. So started in January 2000, graduated with a master's in 2001. So that led to now fast-tracking my assistant from teacher to assistant principal. So I taught for 4 years, and then I immediately became an assistant principal. So what I also did, because remember, I'm stepping in almost immediately, taking these courses. So my mindset was always operating as a principal throughout almost my teaching career.
Yes.
I was like, okay, I see this is what I'm learning in class. This I'm going to say it. So the assistant principal, and I, when we had conversations, it was always, hey, this is what I'm learning in class. How do I execute it? I remember at that, because I started elementary, Then I immediately went to middle. I did 3 years of elementary, 1 year of middle school, and then I became the assistant principal. So my 1 year in that middle school, I did everything as far as like morning detention, after school detention. We used to have something called SLCs, the School Leadership Council. I did that. I didn't do any union things, but it was just like anything that led me to get hours for my internship hours for the principal or principalship. I was there. The principal knew it. I got there early. I left late every single day. Nothing was going to stop me from getting this. So that is what helped expedite me immediately to the assistant principalship. So from there, now in my head, I'm like, ooh, I need to go for the doctorate. But then I actually I put so many hours that I had to just wait. And I was assistant principal for a year and 2 months, and then immediately became a principal. That was 2002, 2001. So yeah, so 2002 I became a principal. November 2002 I became a principal, and then 2003 is when I started to work on my doctorate.
See, we're on similar track. I'm listening to your story, and our stories are somewhat, actually very similar as far as the education track go in terms of career-wise. And the reason I'm sitting here, like, really loving this conversation, and the listening audience, I hope you are too, and not only loving it, but learning something from it, because the same mindset in too many instances of dark-skinned people, black people, African-American people, Haitian-American, immigrants, so forth and so on, are not capable of doing these things that you just described. And the truth of the matter is we're capable and then some. I mean, this whole nonsense of the only reason this one got that job was because of DEI, the only reason she's there is because of DEI, that's just absolute nonsense. Folks are where they are because of the work they've put in. And what I heard you just say was, I stayed after hours. I met with the principal. I said, I'm learning this in school. Can we implement that? So that was all work. That was not a pass. That was not a DEI pass. That was not a just because you were black or just because you were of Haitian descent. That wasn't a pass that we're going to give him that position because he's of Haitian descent. You got that position because you worked your backside off.
Mm-hmm.
There's the double message there. There's the message for our kids who look like us that needs to understand you can get where you want to be if you want it bad enough and you work for it. And then there's the other message of, oh, yes, people with dark skin are more than able. Go ahead.
Correct.
Yep.
So from that level of principalship and then started my doctorate, we had Nova Southeastern had just got this new cohort, and it was a number of us from Elizabeth, principals, supervisors that were like, hey, let's do this. And I'm like, this is on my path. Is that journey that I was going to take. And our goal was to stick together,
right,
to do this and succeed. Now, it's like I got through those things fast, but then I hit that wall. The imposter syndrome. You really can't do this. And I did the coursework, but then it stalled with the actual IRB writing process.
Right.
That is stalled for a while. Now, I become a principal for 14 years. Go through that, assistant principal, and throughout that journey is when my last principalship, I was in Roselle for 6 years, is when I finally did it. I also had a challenge with my chair. Everything was going smooth, and then suddenly it became challenges, and IRB was a challenge, and then, but I still stayed resilient eventually, and throughout all the adversity, and did get the doctorate. And I mention that because, and I think this is a big point for listeners or anyone who's going to hear this whenever. It took me 9 years to get this doctorate. I had to go through 4 different different proposals, meaning I got one idea, spent probably a year writing the lit review and everything else. Then something ended up happening, had to start all over.
Right.
Had to rewrite another proposal. I did it 4 separate times.
Wow.
And we're talking even IRB, missed the window. I had to wait a whole nother year for another approval because I had 4 separate things I had to rewrite. So I mention that because for the last 13 years, it's about to hit on now, since I've gotten my doctorate, even though it took me 9 years, for someone who finishes in 1 year or someone who took 20 years to write it, you're still a doctor.
Correct.
You still did. So that is one thing I want to basically hit, because someone, one of the people that was my not accountability partner, but then just someone that was there to keep uplifting me when I kept trying to compare myself to someone else or other people, said, "Look, when you get that doctorate, you're going to be a doctor like that someone who finished in 2 years or 10 years. You did it. You did not fall to the ABD thing that is all but doctorate status.
Correct.
You finished. So that is what you have to hang your hat on."
No, you're absolutely right. And I could not agree with you more. And I'm intentionally working my way up in your bio. Matter of fact, listening audience, I hope you've been with me since 6, but I truly hope you've been with me since 7, because my guest this morning is Dr. Josue Falaise. Did I get that right?
Yep.
All right. Josue Falaise. All right. That's my guest this morning. And we're talking about his career because, see, again, Dr. Falaise is a black man of Haitian descent. And right now, immigrants and folks of Haitian descent are in the media because of crazed commentary that was being made about them. And so they're on the spotlight at the moment with, like I said, just crazed, ridiculous commentary. But all that's a part of a plan as well. And so when you have someone like Dr. Falaise, who is debunking myths, who is debunking lies, because he wasn't given a pass. He wasn't given he's just there because of DEI. No, he's there because he earned it. And there are other black folks, African-American folks, immigrants who have earned it as well. And that's why I'm taking the time with this, because for me, listening to him was an inspiration. Matter of fact, just listening to him now, just talking about that doctoral program was an inspiration, because I know exactly of what he speaks when he's talking IRB and proposals and dissertations and writing and lit reviews, and I know exactly what he's talking about. And it's no joke. I kind of say, I don't know if you're familiar with fraternities or not, but I kind of call it academic pledging. I mean, that's what, when you're doing a doctoral program, it really is kind of like academic pledging. That's what it is. You're a pledgee. And it is no joke. And you do have to be resilient to not give up. And again, it is so important for people to see us in these positions. So you've principalship, assistant superintendent, chief academic officer. All right, now you're really in a place to make some decisions. Talk a little bit about that.
Yes. So now with the education part finished, I was a principal for my last principalship. I was there for 6 years in Roselle. And during that time, I would say my last 3 years, I kept constantly being told, you need to get a doctorate. You need to have the year's experience as a principal. You need this, all these things that that I kept being told was, you can't become a superintendent until you get those things. So then that last school that I was at, for the remaining 4 years, I ran the school as a district. It was systematic, putting people in place, building their capacity, having things operate to the point where it allowed me to travel a lot, go to different national conferences, present. So the school became recognized as one of the state best schools. People would come to see what does a PLC look like. Things were running SGOs at the student growth objectives.
Right.
The SLOs, how to run a PLC. The IR. What was that? IRNS, the
Right.
Internet
INRS. That's
Referral.
right.
Yeah, we were also a state model for PBSIS. That's the Positive Behavior Support in
Right.
Schools. It had the website with videos that you had to do. It was from our school. So we became like this pillar that when people wanted to see great practice, they would come to our school. And I got to travel around a lot to do that because it was run as a system. So obviously I'm interviewing, not getting certain roles, but every time I kept making it, not every time, most of the times I kept making it to the final. And I'm like, what is it that I can't get? So it's whether it be from director to assistant superintendent to superintendent. I'm like, I'm getting something. And then I eventually did, I was out probably, I can't tell you how many times, because I kept making it to the finals, which means I had to keep taking off on top of the time for traveling. So I was out a lot of days, and but I eventually did get it in 2016 to assistant superintendency in Trenton. And what was great is I lived 3 miles from the Board of Education.
Oh.
I get involved, so to me it was like, I am never leaving Trenton. I'm going to eventually become the superintendent of Trenton because this is home. Like I rode my bike to work.
Right.
I was in the 21 schools. I'm in my suit or I'm in a t-shirt. I can go, if I'm not staying real late for a board meeting, I rode my bike to work, and this was like, to me, like this is it. I'm going to do this here, and that's where I'm at regarding the assistant superintendency.
So again, so let me tell you, you've done that because I'm going straight through. Now we're at Rutgers. Now I heard you mention PBSIS. You know Bill Davis?
No.
Oh, no, because he was at Rutgers, and whenever I was working PBSIS, he was the coordinator for it. He was our liaison with my school and Rutgers. And that was Bill Davis. So I didn't know if your paths had crossed at night. So how did you wind up at Rutgers?
So even before the assistant superintendency, I was looking for employment beyond just a principalship. And for 9 years, whether it be on the low, I kept applying to Rutgers, kept applying to different things like associate vice president of, whether it be Thomas Edison State College, wherever it was, I just kept applying because I just knew that my time for principalship was coming to an end. I felt I was bigger than that during those times. Like I need to step up the next role. So because I kept always applying to Rutgers, eventually, after a year of assistant superintendency, I got the call. Interviewed. The role was to oversee professional development for the Rutgers Graduate School of Education, one of the arms that they had. And it was a kind of an entrepreneurial, building something from either from scratch or bringing different idea. That way it attracts school districts and organizations to this Rutgers arm. And again, this is all revolved around professional development. And I got accepted. A very rigorous, very, very rigorous process. So I was very fortunate to be selected. And then that allowed me to become what people would call is the Rutgers PD guy. Around the country. Again, before a lot of people knew me, me for GOMO, they knew me as the Rutgers PD guy because, again, that allowed me to start traveling throughout the country a whole lot. Now promoting Rutgers Graduate School of Education as this professional development in the way they never did before, because it was mainly, prior to me, solely in New Jersey. And because it's located in Middlesex County, that is some areas besides, some partnerships. But
right.
I really took it to the national and global perspective because they had never seen like Rutgers Graduate School in that light before.
Wow.
And I, as through pitching and even international partnerships, I was out in China training both K-12 and higher ed faculty because of the work we were doing.
I love your drive. I mean, as we're talking, and I was like, once you put something in your mind and say, this is where I'm going, you make your way and you go there. So I love that drive. And again, very similar personalities, very similar experiences, different roads, of course, but very similar in terms of drive and experiences. Because now you've done what you've done in the various educational systems, but GOMO is yours, correct?
That is correct.
So now you take what you've learned and what you know how to do, and you've launched your own business. You've become an entrepreneur in the educational field. So we're going to talk a little bit. Just talk. First off, what does GOMO stand for? If it stands for, is it an acronym or is it a name? What is GOMO?
It is a name. There is a story. We have an actual commercial that on the landing page of our website that people can go check it. So I can leave you not in suspense, but keep you curious. You can go to our website and check out the GOMO story. It is not an acronym.
All right, so it's GOMO Educational Services. Tell us about that. We won't know. We'll have to go to the website to learn what GOMO means, but talk to us a little bit about, what services do you provide?
Sure. So in a nutshell, because we provide a number of services, so when I do meet with potential partners, they're like, wow. In a nutshell, we are a PD and executive level institute that looks about empowering agency and voice in adults so they can do the same for children. And that is performed through 9 service learning platforms. Again, just quick, how to network, meaning districts coming over time and picking each other's brains and then walking out with, specific strategies. We run on-site workshops, high yield, high impact workshops. So that's when we are brought into somewhere and ask us to train, facilitate services on specific skills. We run audits. Our main one is the cultural proficiency audit. So if you're looking to measure how your culture is, it's a whole framework. So it's not just the audit. There's training, there's action planning, and follow through for accountability. So these are the kind of things that we do. Even keynote speaking, as you said, that we performed at Patterson School District for you all in this past August. So we opened and closed. It's all motivational, inspirational keynotes at any point in time in the school year, no matter how the number of your staff and community. We are ready and excited for that. So I only provided you with 4, but there are 9 total platforms.
All right, we're coming down about to the end of our hour together, but there was one story that you told at the end of your presentation that touched me. And I know the listening audience wouldn't have the visuals that we had, but Dr. Falaise put a slide up, and I'm going to let him tell the story because as we get ready to close out. And matter of fact, what I normally do is, and we kind of just did it, I shut my mic off and you get an opportunity to promote anything you want to promote. The only thing you can't say is a dollar amount. So I think I'm going to do everything in one shot. I'm going to give you the opportunity to do that. But I also want you to tell that story that you told us, even though we had the visual in front of us and the listening audience don't. But I think they'll still get the gist. They'll still get the idea of what you mean.
Sure. So there is a visual of 6 children who were from Haiti, and the atmosphere is this almost like now where Haitians, which are constantly being vilified for many different things, and it's obviously a disparate thing than other countries, especially more those who are more fair-skinned. And these children, because they're Haitian, were told that they could not be anything. And what I end up doing is, one by one, from this picture in 1980, show individuals that are sitting in the audience what they are doing all these years later. So in 1980, they can't do anything, be anyone or anything else. And then it's from this person's doing this with students, this person is doing this with the community, this person is doing this one with a large company, this one is doing working, impacting at the university level. So each one is doing something very powerful and impactful beyond themselves. And then ultimately, I go into one person who starts off as a teacher, and then eventually becomes a principal, and then eventually becomes an assistant superintendent, eventually becomes a higher ed admin, and then eventually becomes the CEO, impacting millions of students, all because it started with a teacher. And then I reveal who those children are, and it turns out to be my family, the 6 children, and what we're doing, so people got to visually see who we are, what we're doing, with an actual visual in your face. And as Mark stated, people feel very impacted to see, wow. And I say that because through all the adversity that we continue to go through, we have and had always the ear of our parents sacrificing, pushing, believing in us. In addition to a teacher that it was my senior year when I met my teacher, that teacher that impacted my life, and just, kept pushing it, because sometimes it has to be someone from the outside, not your actual parents or loved ones telling you. So who is it for you, and who are you doing that for to help them? But as a company, that's one thing that we look to work on and work with people that want us to help them do that. And that's what basically GOMO does. We help you empower your HCN voice so you can do for children in a way that maybe has not been done before. This is not something that is, sit and get, really push to drive it authentically, which means that we take the real deep time to design according to your needs. And we would love to not just have one-shot deals, but then long-term partnerships with people that are looking to do some real impactful work that's going to leave a legacy through sustainability. And that can occur through reaching out to us at our website at www.gomoedservices.com. And there's a contact form. You can fill out the contact form, and one of our team members will be reaching out to you. And you can check us out on all our social media platforms and DM. That is on X, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We are at, or the ampersand, GOMOEDS on the Instagram, X, and Facebook. And on LinkedIn, we are at GOMO, GOMO Educational Services. So check us out, one of those platforms, and we would love to do some work with you. So you can see, and we go by a hashtag, which is #WhyGOMO.
Well, Dr. Falaise, I don't even want to use the word enjoyed. I'm going to use the word inspired and energized, because that's part of the problem I have with a lot of people in the churches when they tell the pastor, I enjoyed that sermon. And like, I don't think necessarily the sermon was made for your enjoyment. And so for me, I'm not going to tell you I enjoyed it, but I will say I am energized and inspired, because listening artists, again, if you had an opportunity to see that visual, they were kids, they were children. And as he said, children of Haitian descent who were told, you can't do that, or you're not going to be anybody, or because of you can't do, or nobody's going to support you because of. And yet, throughout, as he said, all the adversity and everything else, all of them became super successful, all 7 of them. And that's a testament right there to your parents and your upbringing and on the outside community who supported you and everything else. Because, again, back to what we were talking about with the words of a teacher or a counselor, because I'm very clear, because you always hear stories about kids who say they want to go to college, and someone along their path, either a guidance counselor or a teacher, told them you're not college material. And when I go to any schools, I'm very clear on my staff and guidance. I say, if I ever hear a child say that you told them they were not college material, I'm going after your license. We're going after tenure charges, because those comments and statements, you never know what trajectory that will take a child on or take him off. So words are powerful. Influence in terms of who the role models are powerful. Again, I cannot tell you the number of students who have said, I became this because of, like you just said, a teacher, what a teacher said to me. And at the same time, on the flip side, there are those that say, well, I wanted to become, but my teacher didn't believe in me, or my teacher said I wasn't college material. So, I said, hey, what the heck? I ain't doing it. So your story is a powerful story. Again, it is GOMO, GOMO Educational Services. And again, as he said, he whet your appetite. If you want to find out what GOMO is, go to the website. As a matter of fact, repeat that website again, please.
Yep. www.GOMOEDservices.com. So GOMOEdservices.com.
All right. Well, man, I tell you what, I thank you so much for taking the time to join me this morning. As I said, I'm energized and inspired, because when I leave here, I have some homework that I need to do, and you energize me to go ahead and get at it. But again, I thank you so much, and I'm going to be in touch with you. I do record these. I do archive them on my YouTube channels, and I'll send you the links, the MP3s, the YouTubes, and all that. And once you get them, you share them however you want. They're yours. I'm not worrying about copyrights and all that kind of stuff. They're yours. Once I give them to them, you send it out to however you want.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great day, and I will be in touch.
Thank you so much.
All right.
I appreciate one just believing in me enough to have me as an interviewee on your show.
Well, like I said, man, I'm energized and inspired. One, meeting you whenever, because you know how I reacted to you that day we were at the Institute, and so I was just honored to meet you and to talk with you, and the fact that you accepted coming on the show. So I thank you. All right, well, like I said, we will be in touch. I will get everything over to you, and I'm gonna get you in front of my boys one way or the other. All right.
Take care.
You do the same.